I apologize for that. I'm going to back up. I'm going to start right over because obviously I didn't hit the right number. So the sound should be on now. If you can go ahead and confirm that with a note. Somebody just put a chat in there. Make sure I got my sound on. Good, great. So let's start this over. So good afternoon, everybody. Today we're looking at how to create AR and OE invoices in Sage 300. So I'm going to go ahead and close this out, and I'm going to come back to that poll here in a second, and I'll do a poll here in a minute. So we're going to look at the AR and OE. We're also going to look at other methods in which invoicing can happen. So we realize that not all invoices are created equal, and they come from various places, from various systems. So we'll touch on some of that as well. All right, so roughly 35, 45 minutes, I expect. We know that the question piece is working, so thanks for chiming in because the sound wasn't working. And then put your questions in the question box, and we'll go from there. So as always, we're here to unleash the potential of your Sage business through the transformative power of technology. We're going to focus on Sage 300 invoicing today, but invoicing may originate from an e-commerce shopping cart. It may come from your payment processor. It may actually come as a result of an order or shipment out of CRM. So there's a lot of different touch points. It could come from an Excel spreadsheet or a Word document or some other means handwritten. There's a lot of ways that invoices can get generated. We just have to figure out what are all the ways that we can record them, automate the processes so that at the end of the day, you can report on them and know what's driving, first of all, the invoice, so that's the lifeline of your business versus what was, did you have to set up before you could create the invoices versus what are you analyzing after the invoice? So all of these spheres that you see on the outside are really, part of that whole business life cycle. And the invoice is kind of sitting smack dab in the middle. It's the lifeline of it, but you can't get to the invoice unless you've got a service, and you can't analyze the business unless you've got some invoices put out there. So that being said, let's get to where I wanted to get to, and that's the quick poll. So I'm going to go ahead and see if I can launch this, and I'm going to launch my second poll here. Looks like you guys have answered the first poll, so I'm going to launch the second poll. And the second one is really around, do you have a remote workforce that needs to create invoices while they're outside of the office? So does that apply to anybody here? Okay, and it doesn't apply to everybody, but it does apply to at least, well, we're 50-50 at this point. So we're going to look at a couple of options on that. We talk through that. So that's becoming more and more of a requirement. Mobility is definitely something that people are looking at, especially with the COVID-19 pandemic. So I'm going to go ahead and close that out, and then we can look at the next piece here. So the agenda for today, we're going to look at just basic invoicing in accounts receivable. We'll look at invoicing in an OE. We'll look at invoicing, how does that work within Sage CRM and related to the OE web screens. We'll look at invoicing in the field, and then we'll just talk about some invoicing via external systems, whether it be Excel, whether it be a third-party billing system, but you ultimately need to record it within Sage somehow. So we'll talk about those 5 points today. If there's anything else that you would like to see, throw it into the chat, throw it into the question, and I'll try my best to work it in. Okay, so let's take a live look. Let's go take a look at the easiest starting point is really just at accounts receivable. I'm going to pull out here, and I'm going to log into the web screens. And so we can do invoicing either in the traditional desktop or the web screens, and I'll do it in both so you guys can kind of see this. One of the advantages of the web screens is you can configure them so that you can hit them from a browser. That browser could be accessed on a laptop somewhere else or a tablet. Wouldn't recommend doing invoicing on a smartphone and you just haven't got enough real estate to do it. But if you wanted to do that, you can go ahead, launch that up in the browser. First, obviously, you got to get your customers set up. But once your customers are set up, then you just got invoice entry. You've got a batch that you can create, and you can go ahead and do that. So I create a new batch. Sure, let's create a new batch. I'll call this demo batch, and it puts the batch date in. Now, this is exactly the same functionality that you see in the desktop. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the desktop up here and see I've got batch number 88 going here. And if I pull the same company up in the desktop and I go look at accounts receivable and I look at my AR transactions and I look at my invoice batch list, here's 88. You can see I haven't even finished giving it a name yet. It doesn't even know that yet. So as soon as you add the batch on the web screen, it's automatically there on the desktop. Okay, so I'm going to just close out of that, come back to my desktop, and let's finish doing an entry here. So let's put an entry description in here. Let's call this sample batch, and I'm going to start plugging in numbers. So the first thing with an invoice, you got to have a customer to invoice. So if I have a customer number, I can plug it in there. If I don't know what the customer number is, I can use my finders to go out there and help me find what is in my customer name. And of course, I'm waking up my web server here, so just bear with me while that catches up. All right, or I'll just tab through that and keep going. You've got a bunch of details that you can put into, whether it's the web screen or whether it's the desktop, but you can put in a PO number, you could put in a document number, whatever the case may be. So I'm going to just, not sure what's going on with that. All right, I'll do it the old fashioned way then. I'm going to come back to, not sure what's going on with my web server at the moment. So I know they were doing some work on it this morning, so maybe they've done something to it, but I'll do it the old-fashioned way here. We'll go with the invoice list, because it doesn't matter either way you do it in the traditional web screen or you do it in the desktop. It doesn't matter. So I'll go sample batch, and in here you're going to put in the customer number. So if you know the number, plug it in. If you don't know the number, use the finder. In the finder, you can find on any of these fields that are here, a phone number, an address, a zip code, whatever you want to do. I just happen to know the customer number, so we can do an XYZ customer, and that's a sample customer I've set up. Within AR, you do still have the ability to do ship to locations, and it's going to look at the ship to locations that are set up. In this case, XYZ doesn't have any, but if I was to switch customers to 1200, Ronald Black does, so he's got a home and an office location, so those are available to set up in AR. And then you've got different types of invoices. You got an invoice, you got a debit note, and a credit note. They're all done in the same place within AR. Versus if you're going to do a credit note in OE, it's a separate screen. So just make note of that. If you're doing different transaction types, they're in the same place in the invoice entry under AR. It's going to auto-generate a document number. You could put a document number in there, but I would highly recommend that you let the system just generate the number. You could put in a PO number if you want to. If you've got an order number that you want as a reference, you can do that. And then, shipment number is going to get from your shipment provider. At this point, you're now going to plug in items. Now, there's two different ways to do this. You'll notice that I've got items because by default, I've set this to item. You've also got the ability to do a summary invoice. And this is good for those where I'm just making sure that revenue recognition is going to the right place into the general ledger, versus if I want to actually use items that I've set up within accounts receivable. These are AR items that we've set up. I don't have full inventory quantities and whatnot. This is basically a glorified price list. By setting up my items here, it does do standard costing methods this way, but I won't get full inventory. So it's good for doing price lists and whatnot. And reoccurring services is a good way to do items this way. But I could do it for items, or I could do it for a summary. So if I do it by items, I can go in here and put in whatever items I have in the system. These are set up within AR, and that I can just choose whatever items I want in here. And the units of measures are set up, and the pricing is all set up there. Notice it's pulling it all in. And if I look at my distribution code that was set up at the item level, But if I hit my finder, I can see what GL account it's going to hit. So that's the key thing when you're using the AR pieces. You're ultimately just trying to put it to the right revenue account and record the sale. Okay, and so on. So if I want to add a new one, I can hit the insert key, hit my F5 key, or use the mouse and put in, whatever item it is that I want. Okay, so, and optional fields are also available within AR as well. Okay, so once you've added the items, you can go ahead and hit add, but you can also look at, well, what taxes have I got? So it's figuring out what your taxes based on whether your items are taxable or not. If your items are not taxable, you need to go into the tax base and change your tax settings. And I can also do this on the fly. If I look at the account and tax, I can go in here and say, well, this isn't taxable. I'm going to say that's 2, and go to the next one and say it's a 2, it's not taxable. And it'll then, I believe, depending on what I said 2 as, non-taxable merchant, then it'll adjust the taxes accordingly. So just have to be very wary of what your tax settings are, and understand the implications that those settings are going to have on your final invoice result. From here, these terms code are coming from your AR customer record. You can override them at the time that you do invoices. You can set different due dates on the fly, but it's going to default it based on the terms code that you've identified within this field. And again, that's pulling from the AR profile. Optional fields, this is at a header level. And then you have the option to do sales split as well. And then you get a total screen in here. Now, you don't have as many functions, discounts, and other things that you do have in order entry. It's pretty basic. In here, it just gives you a total. If you had, if I had taxes, I guess it is still calculating taxes because I've still got the tax in there. So you need to adjust taxes. Then I need to take the tax amount out. So okay, it's wanting me to match the detail line, so that's why it's doing that. So it's important that you get that right at the inventory level, at the item level, and at the customer level as well. So you can see now I've overridden it. It should come out, and there should be no taxes. It's not going to put an error, but it is going to warn you that you've changed your taxes. Okay, so at this point I can add it, and once I've added it, I can go on and go to put the next invoice in if I want to, and then I can print them all within the invoice batch, or I can print the invoice here. So when I print the invoice, I can print it. It's a Crystal Reports form that I can customize. I can print it to a printer. I can print it directly to the customer. So in this case, I could send this to Ronald Black, hit print, and that's going to go out and send an email message to Ronald Black versus printing it to the printer. If I was wanting to print it again, so I'll go ahead and close that out, and say I want to print that again just to show you what that looks like, and I'll just preview this so you can see what this form looks like. These forms are all Crystal Report forms. You can see that I'd already sent it, so it doesn't. I have to hit reprint. So I'll print that again. So if you've done that, it comes up blank. You got to come up reprint because it sees that it was already printed. So even if you've emailed it, it's seen it as it's been sent to the client. Doesn't want you to send it again. So in this case, there's the 2 items that we added. There's no tax. We've got an invoice. I could put your logo up here, whatever modifications we want to make to this form. It is our Crystal Report form can be made. So this is the stock AR invoice template. So I'll close out of that and close out of here. And then I can move on to the next invoice if I want to. Okay, so if I'm done with that, I can save it. The other options I've got here is I can prepay. So if I needed to deposit on this particular invoice, I can hit prepay, and this will actually create an AR receipt batch for me, and then I can record the deposit here and without having to go to the receipt batch piece within AR. At this point, save it. I can post it. And I want to say, yes, it's ready to post. Okay, so that's what's happening in the web service. So the web service is holding that one. So I'll have to shut down my web service and restart it, and that'll start it back up. But So that's the AR invoice. So if there's any questions on the AR side, now would be a good time to put them into the queue. So I'm going to transition over to order entry. So if I've got an OE invoice in order entry, I've created an invoice already here. I believe it's 169, and I'll just hit tab there. So just a quick halogen desk lamp that I've created an order for. So you may have various people that are pounding in orders into your organization, and that you would do that in order entry. I have the option here, once I post this order, to ship it. If I say ship, and I want to maximize this so you can see a few things here. If I say ship all within an order, within the order entry screen, notice all of a sudden I've got a create invoice button that appears. I can default this within my settings to automatically create the invoice, or I can leave it blank so that I have the choice to create the shipment separate from the invoice. So it's really whatever your process is. It is an option in your setup options with an OE, whether or not that is automatically selected. Let's create invoice. Now I could create the invoice here, or I could just do the shipment. I'm going to do the shipment at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and post this particular item. Before I do that, I'm going to do a quick pre-authorization of a credit card. What is it doing there? I've got XYZ. So let's I may have to quickly redo that order. I don't have a credit card set up on that. I'm going to post the order anyway without a pre-authorization, and I'll post another one with a pre-authorization on it. So let's go ahead and say no on that, and let's go ahead and create another order. This time I'll do it for Ronald Black. I know he's got a credit card on file. And set up an item. Ronald Black loves desk lamps, so let's give him another one in here, and let's order 2 of those desk lamps. And I'm going to do a quick pre-authorization there for that order, and I'm going to go ahead and also say ship all. And notice I'll leave the create invoice blank, so I'm going to go ahead and post this. Okay. So it's created the shipment record. I'm not going to create the shipment record, okay? And I've got order number 170. So notice that I've got order number 170 that's there. I'm going to close out of that. Now, if I was just processing and doing invoices for people that were on account, I would then go to the invoice entry. If I wanted to capture those shipments that I've got a pre-authorization that I just did, I would use the capture payments with invoices. So in this case, let's go to the first scenario where I'm going to use it just all on account, and I'm going to ship it out. So if I go to my invoice that's, let's say, actually I don't want the invoice, I want the order number, contains 169. So there's, okay. Let's go down to the bottom here. Let's go down to the bottom. I thought it was 169, but maybe I was wrong. All right, so there's all the orders. Oh, that's why, because I'm on the invoice record itself. So in here, I've got an invoice number that we generated. If I wanted to create a new invoice, that was what I did. I hit the wrong number. So in this case, I've got a shipment of 115 is going to be for order number 169. So if I wanted to look at and find it by order number, I could do that as long as I've got the order number here. I'm not finding it, so I have to add it. So it's not in the sample data. So in this case, it is 115, I'm fairly certain. And there's the desk lamp that's there. And from here, you could go ahead, and all you really need to do, if I maximize this out, everything has come across from the shipment. All I need to do to create the invoice is hit post. That's all I need to do to create the invoice once the shipment is done. So in this case, I'm taking shipment number 115 with the desk lamp. I'm going to hit post, and let's go ahead and create the invoice. Post. If you want to print the invoice, sure, let's print the invoice. And again, it's a crystal report form. I can preview the invoice, and I can also send it out via email. Okay, so I'll go ahead and preview this invoice so you can see what that looks like. And there's the halogen desk lamp. Again, it's crystal report form. If I had a whole bunch of invoices in here, I'd be able to drill down and look at a range. So from here, I can close this out, and that pretty much finishes off that invoice. I can close it, or I can move on to the next one if I wanted to. The other example I gave you is when you do a shipment, and you did a shipment and you did a pre-authorization on a credit card. You can use the capture payments with invoices, and notice I've got order number 170, which is I did, and I had another previous order in there from another example that I was doing. So I could say, well, I don't want to do that one, but I do want to capture this one. So if I go ahead and I capture an invoice, and I'm not going to print the receipt, if I capture an invoice, you'll notice it'll take order number 170, it'll create the shipment number and then an invoice. So I've got a shipment number 116 that was created, and it automatically generated a receipt batch for it and put it in batch 76, and I captured and invoiced it. So if I went and looked at this and I closed this down, let's go ahead and put this to the customer, and I'll go ahead and print that as invoice number 106, and it'll go ahead and push that out to the customer, and I'll go ahead and close that down and close that down. So now if I went and looked at my invoice entry and go to my last invoice, there's 106 for that fluorescent desk lamp that was auto-generated because I went through the capture and payment with invoices. If I now go and I look at Ronald Black, we created this invoice for, let me go log into his account and pull it over here to your other screen. Here's Ronald Black's Gmail account. And he would have just gotten a few pieces of email because we hit a few things here. So there's the invoice that was there. I guess that's the only thing I said that previewed everything else. So there's the invoice that was generated. We did that from the credit card piece. Actually, this is the one from AR. The other one hasn't gotten here yet. So look at the inbox. Sometimes Gmail is a little slower, but that's what will end up happening is it'll come and kick it into the email box. So apparently Gmail isn't working that fast today, so I'll let it go by, and if I see it come back, I'll re-show that a little bit later. Okay, so that's the OE side of things. Now, what happens if you don't want to give somebody a full license into ERP, but you have given them a license into Sage CRM? Sage CRM license is much cheaper. So if I go look at this, I'm going to close that down. We go look at this, and I go pull up Ronald Black here within my CRM instance. Let me go log out here and log back in. Let's try this here. Let's say CRM, log back in, get everything timed out while we were in the other areas. Back into Ronald Black. All right, so here's Ronald Black. You can see that his OE inquiry is here. I could see all the orders that are there. But really, from here, I have the ability to create a new order. But because I've given Ronald Black, or in this particular case, the admin user rights to go in and generate orders, generate quotes, and even generate shipments and invoices, I can do all of that from this CRM screen. So in this case, I've got Ronald Black. I pulled up an OE order, and notice I've got a create invoice button that's there. It's grayed out at the moment because I haven't got any lines. It doesn't, and I haven't shipped anything. So if I start to add a line, we go in, we add those fluorescent desk lamps, and put in one of those there. And at this point, I can just hit refresh, give you my totals. At this point, if I go ahead and I say ship all, now at this point, my create invoice button is available. So I can do an order, a shipment, and an invoice given security rights all within Sage CRM just by using the Sage 300 web screen. So if I now wanted to create the invoice, all I need to do now is hit post. So what it's going to do, it's going to go out, generate the order, generate the shipment, and generate the invoice, and post it all at the same time. And so at this point, do I want to print the invoice? Sure, let's print it. Let's send that on out to the print destination. Let's go to the customer's print destination and print, and that's going to email invoice number 107 out to the customer. Notice it's in sequence. This is 107. The last one I did is 106. I did the other one in Sage 300. This one was in Sage CRM, but I'm really using the web screen. So in fact, I'm in Sage 300 just using the web screen. So that gives you another option to actually generate invoices using a less expensive license with Sage CRM. And quite frankly, gives you, for those sales users, more functionality than they would have, because now you've got all the CRM functionality in addition to the web screens that are there. So I'll go ahead and close that out. And notice I now I've got an order that's in the system. If I go to my OE inquiry and I want to look at all invoices, the invoice 107 is already there, and I can drill down into it and see what it was made up of. Okay, there's that best one. Okay, so that's another way to do invoicing with the system. Now, some of you had indicated that you do have employees that are remote or they're in the field that need to do invoicing. So this is one way to do it. You could do it through the web screens. It's one way. I will tell you that we've got people that are doing it this way. It is sufficient. It depends on the device you've got that you're working with on a tablet. And so there are some challenges using a tablet, especially Apple devices. Unless you're emailing the invoice, if you want to print the invoice, that becomes a little bit more problematic with Apple devices, because you actually have to pull the PDF file down locally, and Apple doesn't support local files on their tablets. If you're using an Android device, that's a little easier to do that. So that's an option. Now, one of the other options are, and I'm going to actually kick this back to my PowerPoint. So one of the things I wanted to do was take you through this live, but found that wasn't able to entirely do that. Oh, sorry, I'm going to try that again. So I've taken screenshots. So this morning I went through and looked at another tool that's fantastic for those that are remote, and it's called Autosimply Sales Anywhere. And this is a plugin that feeds orders, invoices, or shipments and invoices directly into order entry from this interface. So what you're looking at is I've logged into Sales Anywhere from my Apple iPhone. I've also done this from my Android tablet, so just a different size screenshot. And you get the ability to do quotes, different sales, orders, shipments, and invoices all from within here. So in this case, what I've done is an actual, I believe this is an invoice that I produced out of this. So if I hit the sales button, I'm going to go highlight this so you can somewhat see this. So if I hit the sales button here, it then takes me over into, well, what customer am I looking for? I can search on any 4 of these parameters. I have a phone number, a name, a parcel search, and this is very, very quick, very snappy. So in this case, I chose Ronald Black and went through to the next slide. Once I choose Ronald Black, then it asks me, I can hit the plus key at the top, and it shows me a list of items that I can sell them. I can do a multi-select. I can search on anything here. I can even use a scanner or even the camera to scan a barcode to pull up an item in this case. Once I've done selecting those items, in this case, I'll just go to the next slide, which shows me selecting the items. I can do a multi-select just by touching them with my finger. And once I'm done with that, I hit Finish Select down at the bottom here. So I hit the Finish Select or selection, and then it gives me a summation of what's here. I can go in and edit any of the quantities if I wanted to. I wanted to increase that to 5. I could just go into that record and hit 5, and away you go. And then all I really need to do is hit the Post button down at the bottom. The other thing that I've got here is I've got a sales type here that when I went into this screen, said, okay, I want a sales order. I want an order, shipment, and an invoice. So it's going to generate all 3 of those documents from the Autosimply Sales Anywhere applet. Once I've got that, I've got the option to ask for a signature. So if I want delivery verification, I could put my signature in there. You can see that's my signature or my initials, and then you just basically move on to the next screen. So once you've got to the next screen, you've got a few other options. You want to confirm you want to post the document. When you post the document, notice what it's doing. It's actually pulling and generating an invoice number, and it's pulling that directly from Sage 300. So if I went and looked in Sage 300, I'll have invoice number 198 in this particular system where I was doing the testing. Okay, so you tell right away that I've got direct integration. And if I look at the next screen, this is pretty much the same, default template or invoice spec that you get out of your standard invoices. The one thing that is different there is it's captured my signature and put it at the bottom of the invoice. Okay, so that's one way. And if you wanted to have a smaller portable printer, more of a till receipt printer, you can attach the till receipt printer printouts to those with signature lines on those as well. So that's an option. And then at the end of the day, what it ends up doing is you can hit share at the bottom of that screen. In fact, if I go back to the previous screen, at the bottom here, you'll see a share button. After I post, I have the ability to share. And once I hit share, then I can push that out to an email. I can send it to a text message, whatever it is that I want. And it's actually going to go ahead and send that particular invoice out. So in the example here, I'll discard that. In the example here, I'm going to just minimize this down. Oops. I've got the invoice message here. And here's the actual invoice that the system generated for me. Okay, so here's number 198. Here's all the things that were on the screenshots that I was talking about. So if you're looking for a really good way to automate your order, shipment, invoicing for your mobile people, this is a very, very solid solution. It's very quick, very snappy, works with Android, works with the iOS. In fact, you can go look for it on both the iOS store as well as Google Play and just look for Autosimply Sales Anywhere, and you can download a trial version. You're hitting their database versus theirs, but you can see how it's going to work. So I'd encourage you to do that. So with that being said, let's go back to the last piece, which is really looking at a scenario where you may have some third-party billing that you deal with. So say, for example, you had a third-party system that did all your billing and you were pulling all of that into accounts receivable, but you were doing that manually, and you've got 100 invoices a week that you're processing, or a month, or whatever it is, whatever volume you've got. And, inevitably, when you process that many, you're probably going to make some errors, some keying mistakes, and you're probably never going to be in sync with your other system. One of the options that you have in that case is you can pull orders, invoices, shipments from the external third-party billing system into Sage 300 using a tool called IMAN. So we use it for a lot of customers that do, websites that got third-party billing, as I mentioned, for various reasons why we're going to pull data from one source of data into another or into Sage 300 using IMAN. So if I look at this, one of the things, there's some demos in here, but one of the things I like to point out is all of the functionality that is available is really all of the transactions that you can do within AR, you can map to and pull transactions in automatically from external systems. So if you find yourself in a scenario where you're constantly having to rekey, come talk to us and we can show you how this reliable IMAN works and can save you hours and hours and prevent any mistakes, because we're going to pull data from one data source and pull it right into Sage 300. We can also build custom business logic around it and do verification, send notifications for any errors that are coming from one system over to the other. So it's very robust and is a great time saver and ensures that you get the information from one system to the other in a way that is consistent, so that your reporting and everything else that you're relying on to get your invoicing right is done right. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and come back to my PowerPoint. and see if there's any questions in the queue. And I'm about on time, so I've got 39 minutes into it. So any questions at this point? All right, so I'll go ahead and leave that question queue open. Got another webinar tomorrow. We're going to look at integration with Microsoft Office products and some of your options there. And so with that, there's no questions. Again, I want to thank you for attending. Sorry for not turning the sound on right away, but we caught that quickly. If you've got questions, reach out to me. My email address is here, and use any of our social media ways to connect with us, or reach out to your account manager, and we'll get you the answers that you're looking for. So again, hopefully we'll see you on the next webinar, and have a great day, everyone.